She's beautiful and she's kind and she's full of love and she's been touched by God. And she's going to share that with you today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Simone. I love you. Here you go. I kept the right ones out and let the wrong ones in. Had an angel of mercy to see me through all my sins. There were times in my life when I was going insane, trying to walk through my cool, and I feel nothing. Hi, friends. My name is Simone, and I am a grateful cocaine addict. I like to thank the committee. They did a wonderful job. They invited us. They embraced us with their love. And I like to thank the speakers that came before me. Kind of makes me a little nervous. I like to take a moment to invite God into the room so that He can speak through me. I'm Simone. I'm a cocaine addict. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I grew up in Moncton, New Brunswick. Um, my home life was dysfunctional. I grew up with alcoholic family. That's not what makes me me. You know, at a very young age, something was not quite right. My first addiction was candies, penny candies. So I stole money out of my mother's wallet so I could support that habit. My next addiction was cigarettes, and I stole to support that habit. When I was 10 years old, I was getting into trouble, and my mother thought it would be a good idea to put me in a convent. So she sent me away to a convent. I was there for a couple of years, and when I left there, I rebelled, and I wanted absolutely nothing to do with God. I was 13 years old when my first drunk, and a couple of boys came up to us girls and asked us if we wanted anything from the bootlegger, and we didn't know anything. And we said sure, and it was going to be $1.50 for a bottle of wine. So you can imagine how great that wine was. We had $3 amongst the four of us, so we got a couple bottles of wine. And when they came and they gave them to us, we knew what their intentions were. And we told them to buzz off, and we went out into the woods by ourselves, and a couple of the girls took a swig of the wine and spit it out, and I said, let me try. And I took a swig, and I actually liked it. So I drank a bottle and a half of this wine. Obviously I got totally intoxicated. So I was obnoxious. They wanted to dump me. They dumped me at the cottage steps at my cottage, and my mother opened the door and she looked at me. She said, "What is wrong with you?" And I looked at her in the eyes and I said, "Somebody put some LSD in my fish and chips." I had absolutely no idea what LSD was, but it sounded good, right? So my mother's on her way up to the canteen to find out who had put LSD in my fish and chips. And she ran into my friends, and they had my bicycle, one of my runners, my jean jacket, my pack of smokes, and she asked them. And they looked at her and they started laughing. They said, "She drank a bottle and a half of wine. She's drunk." Right? And that night, I was so sick and so thirsty, and being that ill the next day was sufficient enough reasons, and the book talks about that, it was sufficient enough reasons for me to abstain from alcohol for a number of years. But that thing that they called LSD was around the corner and I fell in love, right? The first time I put a chemical in me, it was mescaline, and my brother had come out of prison, and he had this great big huge mountain of it. And I did it, and not knowing until I walked into these rooms 33 years later that I had crossed that line immediately. I did a whole bunch of it, and one was never going to be enough, and the obsession to get more was going to took off just like that. And the obsession would be, where am I going to get more? How am I going to get more? Who am I going to have to rip off to get more? Blah, blah, blah. And it just wouldn't stop. On Friday, I would be thinking about Saturday. And then after a while, all the days just became one, and I'm going to fast forward 33 years of addiction. We all know what that's like. I'm going to take you to my last 5 years. I got married to an alcoholic. We started dating. We met on Skid Row in Vancouver, British Columbia, on Hastings Street. He was a musician. I was a groupie. Um, you know, Somebody came up to us the first night I met him. He said, "You guys can get arrested for doing that." You know, and I didn't care, right? I just didn't care. And so we started dating, and he was really an alcoholic, and I didn't drink. I did drugs. If I had a choice between alcohol and drinking and doing dope, dope was my thing, right? I barely ever drank. And we were having dinner, and he said to me, he goes, "I'm going to quit drinking." Given sufficient enough reason, I was in love, right? I really, really loved this guy. And given sufficient enough reason, I said, "I'm going to stop drinking too," right? But I couldn't put away the dope, right? I was still doing the drugs, right? I was smoking pot, doing whatever, and we got married. One day, this is like 6 months after we got married, we bought a house. I have absolutely no idea why. Now I know, God. I went in his coat pocket and I found this envelope. And inside this envelope, I found these flaps, right? For those who don't know, it's little things of pockets of paper that we put cocaine in. And I knew what was in there, and I flipped out. I just went totally ballistic because I knew where that was. I said him, but really it was me, where that was going to take me. And as I'm flipping out, I'm stealing some, right? I'm stealing some. And then he goes off to work, and I do it. Now, I woke up that monster that had been lying dormant because for a long period of time, all I did was smoke pot, right? And I woke up that monster. How was I going to get more? Where was I going to get more? He was honest. He was Scottish, so he liked to say he was frugal. I like to say he was cheap. You know, and so I came up with this plan. It was a perfect little plan. It was a perfect little triangle. So the plan went from my employer's bank account to my bank account to the dealer, right? And now he's an honest guy. So if I would have been telling him that I was stealing money, right, he would have made me go and tell my employer and give it back, right? So there's no way I'm telling him, right? So then I came up with a plan that my friends wanted to buy some so that we were going to be selling it to them, right? So, but my friends were the ones in my head, right? So I had a whole bunch in there. And so then I came up with another plan that if we buy it in large quantities, if we buy it by the ounce, we could sell 20 grams, right? And then we would share the other 8. Well, I'm the one who's buying the 20 grams, right? With this money that I'm embezzling from my employer. And so this goes on. And there were periods of time when I was really, really sick and tired, right? And I really wanted to stop, but I didn't know how to stop, So My friend moved to Amsterdam. My friend moved to Victoria. But then another friend would come in, and then I'd have to buy some more. And the vicious cycles just went on and on and on. And I'm going to fast forward 4 years of me doing this. At the very end, at the beginning, it was fun. At the end, I was by myself. I had a house. I was stuck in the bathroom. I don't know if you guys can relate. The only place that I could be anywhere I went was the bathroom. I go camping. I never saw the sunlight because I was stuck in the bathroom. You know, one of the guys said to his girlfriend, he goes, she masturbating in there? Or what the fuck is she doing? She's like stuck in the bathroom for like hours, right? I just couldn't get out. I just couldn't. Spiders became my friends, and I just couldn't stop. Then I got sick. I got really sick. Who's a cocaine addict? We read that today. Sometimes we couldn't even breathe, but I sure could inhale, right? I sure could inhale. And no matter how sick I was, I couldn't stop flicking that lighter, and I ended up getting sick. I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. It still didn't stop me. I got my husband to bring me in some. I just couldn't stop. I didn't know how, and so I got sick. Now there's a break in that perfect little triangle I had built, but I can't stop. And I still want more. So now I'm starting to steal from me and him. I started cashing in his RSPs, not mine, his, right? I took out a line of credit on the house. We walked into the bank. We had 5 years left to pay on the house. He thought we were going in to get a better deal on the mortgage rate. We walked out. We had 25 years left to pay on the house. I created so much financial damage, and I remember getting this call from my employer, from his son, and it's a family operated business that I was working for at the time. And I remember getting a call from the son, and he said, we've hired somebody to clean up the books, because I was so messed up. Like, I was using while I was at work. I was so far behind I was a bookkeeper for 3 companies, and I was so far behind in all of my work because I couldn't stop using. I'd be going in the little back room because I had my own little office, and I'd be using in there. I just couldn't stop. And when he told me that, I knew at that precise moment that the gig was up, that I was all they would have ever had to do was open up one bank statement, and I would have been caught. I didn't do it cleverly. I did it like it was like crazy, but they trusted me and they never looked. And that had gone on for 5 years. And when he told me that they hired somebody, I thought, that's it, I'm done. And that's when I started creating the damage for within our household. So now I come home, and there's 2 great big huge envelopes sitting on the table. And I said to my husband, who's in the other room doing a line, I said, what are those? He goes, oh, the lawyer that notarized our house. Somebody was waiting for me when I came home in the driveway, and they gave me these 2 envelopes. And at that precise moment, I knew. And it wasn't until I came into these rooms, this is where my rock bottom was. This was my step 1. When I opened up the envelopes and I looked, and I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm going to jail. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm going to jail. And he's in the other room. He goes, what are you talking about? And I said, I stole some money, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to jail. And he said, how much money are you talking about? And I'm not saying this to impress you guys, because it literally blew my mind, because I had absolutely no idea. $950,526.78. I'm so sorry, I'm going to jail. For the first time probably in my entire life, I, at that precise moment, had told the truth. I had been honest. I had been honest with another, and I told him. I went in the room and I did the biggest, fattest line I ever did, because that was going to be my last line. And then I had to do the next right thing, but I didn't know what that was. So 5 years previous to that, I had gotten busted. I was smoking dope in my car. Who's a cocaine addict? I love it because that's my story. I was scraping the baggies and the envelopes, and trying to get the last of the last flakes, that's what I was doing. I was smoking my car, and all of a sudden I looked up and there was a cop standing at my window. My car's full of smoke, right? And so when the, I'm just going to back up. So when I first saw the cop, he was driving up the street, and my head said to me, "You need to leave." Right? My heart was saying, "You need to leave." And then I thought, "No, you need to do another hoot." So I did another hoot. And then I look up and he's like right there, right? And my head said, "You need to start crying." Or my heart was saying, "You need to start crying," because I was parked in front of a cemetery. And I could cry and say, "Oh, my brother's just died," blah, 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 and I should have gotten out of the car, but instead I rolled down the window and this big poof of smoke comes and hits him in the face. And he's like, "Oh my God, your car's on fire. You need to get out of the car." He's about to call the fire department until he reaches underneath my seat and he finds all these empty envelopes, right? So now he thinks he's got me on trafficking, right? They were all empty. They were all empty. I had just smoked everything. And so the lawyer that got me off on that charge, um, he got the charges stayed. I called him the next day because all I wanted to do was do the next right thing. I didn't know what that was, but I knew I needed some help. So the next day I called the lawyer, asked him if he could help me. I called my sister. I have a brother and a sister that's out here or in Vancouver and one in New Brunswick. And I called her and I said, "I need to talk to you." And it took me about 6 hours for me to be able to come out and tell her everything. Now she's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said, "Do you want to have a family meeting?" And I said, "Yes." So she called my brother and said, "We need to talk." So my brother came over and I got honest again. And I told him what I had been doing. And my brother looked at me and he said, "Do you want help?" And I said, "Yes." And my sister called her sponsor, whose husband was a member of Cocaine Anonymous. And she called him, and it was on a Wednesday night at 9:30. And he came over to her house and he 12-stepped me. He asked me one important question: "Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?" And I was so beaten. I was so beaten of all of the lies, all the deceit, all of the hurt, all the shame. I just couldn't bear it any longer. And he asked me if I wanted to go to a meeting. And I said yes. So he took me to my very first meeting on the Friday night. It's called Friday Night Live. It's in North Vancouver. Now, the only thing that was going on, the obsession switched from how am I going to get dope to I'll go to meetings. This will look good in court, right? This will look really good in court and maybe I won't get charged, right? And that's all that's going on in my mind from Wednesday until I walked into that meeting at 7:30 in the evening. And I'm sitting there and I'm ashamed, full of guilt, full of remorse, have no idea what I'm walking into. I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous, but remember, I'm a drug addict, not an alcoholic, so I couldn't relate with them, and I was in denial about that. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I hear this lady get up and she shared, "It's really good to be in a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous because we can freely talk about what's actually killing us." And I don't know if it was the word cocaine, I think probably that perked my ears and I kind of went, "Oh, pay attention." And then they went out at halftime and they came back and they're all happy and they're all laughing and they're all looking good and they're all healthy looking. And I go, "Oh my God, that's what I wanted my entire life. Can I get that too?" And there's this girl that was sitting beside me and she was 4.5 years clean. And she started talking to me. And I said, "But you must smoke dope." And she goes, "No." And I said, "But you must drink." And she goes, "No." And I said, If you have 4.5 years clean, what are you doing here on a Friday night? Because I didn't get it, right? And she said, to freely pass on to you what was so freely given to me. I thought, huh? What's that mean? I had no idea. But today I do know. I cannot keep what I have unless I freely give it away, And then she went and she got this meeting guide and she went around to all of the women and all the women signed this meeting guide, you know. So how? I got the honesty when I told my husband for the very first time what I had been doing. My mind opened up when I walked when I was at that meeting, and when she gave me that meeting guide, and I went home and I opened it up, and I got the willingness when I walked in to my next meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. On my third meeting, this girl comes up to me. She goes, "You were here yesterday." I said, "Yes, I was." She said, "Do you have a sponsor?" I go, "No." I had absolutely no idea. I thought, sponsor, you're going to give me stuff, right? Isn't that what sponsors, when someone's being sponsored, they get stuff? And she said, "I'll be your temporary sponsor." I said, "Okay." She said, "Do you have a big book?" Now, remember, I told you my husband was an alcoholic and he had tried AA in the 80s, and he had this big book that was sitting on the shelf that, was all full of dust. And I said, I can take it down and dust it off. And she goes, "Okay." And she goes to the front table and she comes back with this idiot's guide for really, really smart people. Well, I didn't see anything about the idiot's guide. All I saw was for really smart people. I thought, that's me. I said, "I can't pay for that." She said, "Don't worry, you'll be able to pay it forward later on." I said, "Okay." So that started my journey on the 12 steps. On my way home, I'm thinking to myself, what's this kid going to teach me? I'm 46 years old. She's 21 years old. What's this kid going to teach me? What she taught me was about self-esteem, responsibility, confidence, respect, and most importantly, she guided me through the 12 steps. She made that book come alive for me, and she guided me through my first 12 steps. And I remember sitting in the meeting, and it's my first 2 weeks in, and they announced there's going to be an area meeting on the second Sunday of the month. And I turned around and looked at the guy sitting beside me, and I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Write that date down. You need to be there." I went, "Okay." I was willing to do whatever it took, so I wrote that date down. I still have that book. And I showed up at area, not knowing why I was there. I was going to this other meeting that didn't have a GSR. So after my second area, I went to them and I said, "Can I be your guys' GSR? I'm going to area. Can I represent your group? Because, I'm going there anyway." And they said, "You need to be a member." I said, "Okay, I'll talk to my sponsor." 'Cause she told me I could only represent one group, but I could go and support as many meetings as I want, but be of service to one group. So I changed home groups and I became their GSR. And then so when they asked me to be of service prior to that, I couldn't, because I'm going to jail any minute now. They're going to come and get me any minute. I was just waiting. And I couldn't talk about my crime without crying because of all the shame and the remorse. I still have that shame and remorse, but I'll tell you why I don't cry about it anymore as much. So I'm going to area, I'm representing this group. And that day came when I got the call and I have to go stand before the judge. So it's just before that. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get 90 days so that I could go, because they talked about this thing called H&I. I don't know if you guys ever heard about it, but it's where you get to go and share your story with other really sick people too. And I wanted to do that, right? And I couldn't wait to get 90 days. And then I got my 90 days, and the guy goes, "Okay, you're going to come with me." And the next thing you know, when we're walking out, he goes, "You're now the chair of that panel." I'm like, "What?" Right? So I got to share my experience, strength, and hope at detoxes, treatment centers. And the last Sunday of my freedom, I got to go and share my experience, strength, and hope at this detox treatment center. And then on the Tuesday, that was on a Sunday, on the Tuesday, members of Cocaine Anonymous had sent letters to the judge on my behalf, giving their full names. You know, we're an anonymous fellowship, giving their full names, their addresses. And when I showed up in court, there were members of Cocaine Anonymous sitting there to support me. You know, they told me that they will love me no matter what, and that was the truth. You know, they told me that you know, if I'm to be of service when and if that day comes, we'll deal with it. But till then, you can be of service. So I was. And the judge looked at me, didn't believe that I was a cocaine addict because we clean up nice, right? We clean up good. You know, I was 13 days shy of 2 years when the judge handed me a 4-year sentence to federal prison. You know, my sister looked at me and said, "That's exactly what God wants for you." And I was like, "I fucking want to hear that." Right? That's not what I wanted to hear. You know, and it was the most beautiful thing. I got sentenced. They took everything away from me. They took away my recovery, my fellowship. They took away my meetings. They took away my husband. They took away my home. But the one thing they could not take away from me was my conscious contact with God, right? God was there with me through it all. I had the pleasure of meeting this other girl who was a member of Cocaine Anonymous, go figure, from Edmonton, Alberta, right? Her and I tried to start a CA meeting in prison. They wouldn't give us a room, so we started one outside. I was able to bring in big books and 12 by 12, you know, for the women, because I can't keep what I have unless I freely give it away. You know, and when I came out, I'm in the halfway house, you know, the women were coming out. You know, some of them found their ways into the rooms. Some of them are no longer with us. You know, but I was able to carry a message. You know, I wanted to be of service to this fellowship. And I remember I was on long-term disability through my employer, only by the grace of God. I don't know how that happened. And it was time for me to let it go. And I remember going to my addictions doctor and saying, "I'm scared. I'm really, really scared, because the only thing that I know is retail, cashier, bookkeeping, anything that has to do with money. And if I have to deal with money, I'm going to steal it, right? I don't trust myself enough to not take it, right? Because that's all I had done my entire life. I had taken other people's money, you know, and he wrote me this prescription. He said, "Share this with your sponsor." And as I'm walking out, I opened it up and it said, "Go walk a fucking dog." Right? Those were his words. Because if I did that, I didn't have to deal with money, right? So I thought, okay, what can I do? And when I was in prison, these women from Elizabeth Fry would come in, kind of like Salvation Army kind of thing, and they would come in, they would talk to us, and they would bring us treats on Friday nights. And one of the girls, I thought, took this aptitude test to see what I could do. You know, and my thinking is, I could become a pharmacist technician, right? One for them, two for me. No, can't do that. And I thought, being a medical office assistant. And one of the girls said, "Well, why don't you become a nursing unit assistant for the hospital?" And I said, "Would they hire me? I have a criminal record. I'm in prison." And I said, "Can you ask?" So she came back and she said, "Yeah." She said, "You got a couple of things going for you." She said, "You would kind of be like a minority because A, of your age, and B, because you have a criminal record." And I went, "Oh, okay." So I came out and I wanted to take this course, and I went and I checked it out, and I wanted this so bad. But I needed a grade 12. I needed English, and I needed a B average, and I took the test and I didn't get it, and I went home and I laid on the bed and I'm pounding my feet, pounding my fist, kicking my feet, like throwing a little tantrum. like a little kid, and then all of a sudden God goes, "What the fuck are you doing? Get your grade 12. Go get upgraded. You can do this." And I got up, and that's exactly what I did. I took the course. Now it's time for me to apply for jobs. One of my friends had OD'd, and we were at the hospital supporting her. And I remember going outside, and my phone rang, and I answered the phone, and it was Human Resources for Vancouver Coastal Health asking me to come in for an interview, but they needed me to come in to explain my criminal record. And I said, "You tell me where and you tell me when, and I will be there." And when I hung up the phone, I looked around, right? Who in the hell was that? That wasn't me. I was scared. I was so scared, right? But God does for us what we can't do. Those are the promises, right? So I showed up and I told them the truth. I told them that I had embezzled to support to support a drug addiction. You know, that at that time I was 5 years clean, and that I continued to go to meetings, and, you know, and I was on full parole. I was living in a halfway house, and they looked at me and said, I have two things to say. There goes the head, bow down, full of shame, full of guilt. And she said, "Congratulations on all of that you've done and what you continue to do for your recovery. And secondly, you've been cleared to work in all areas of the hospital. Congratulations." I get goosebumps, right? That was 13 years ago. I like to say that I kept my clean date, but remember, I'm a drug addict, not an alcoholic. And I was in total denial. And then one day when I heard somebody from the podium say, right out of the big book, "If you can have a drink and put it down, my hat goes off to you." And I thought, that is me. I can do that, right? So I had that drink and I put it down and everything was okay. And then months would go, you know, and I'd have another drink, and maybe I wouldn't even drink at all. I'd have a couple sips, put it down. My hat goes off to you. You know, one day I co-signed another person doing that, a really good friend of mine. You know, she didn't have the same experience I had. And it took her down this dark, dark, dark place. She just took a 1 year, and that was 13 years ago. You know, and my last drink was a half of a beer, and I hate beer. I don't even like beer. Beer sucks. I had half of a beer, and that was on April 22nd of 2012. In July, I called my sponsor and I said, because it took me that long to come to terms with everything, and I called my sponsor and said, "I'm changing my clean date." She goes, "Oh, why?" And I said, "I had a half of a beer. I'm changing my clean date, but I'm not changing anything else. It doesn't change the work that I've done. It doesn't change the service I have done. It doesn't change the sponsorship I have done. It's changing my clean date." She said, "Well, I don't know anybody else has ever been able to do that, but if you think you can." But then she sentenced me to AA for a year. And I went, "Okay, I can I can do that," because all I did was Cocaine Anonymous, right? And so I did that, and you know, it's the best thing I ever did because I was able to walk, and my feet and my mouth were now matching, you know. And so I changed my clean date on April. My new clean date is now April 23rd, 2012. And I had came to that Y in the road, you know. This is what my head was telling me. You can carry on and you can live by spiritual principles and you can live with the help of God, or you can hold your head up high and tell the people that you now call family what you had been doing and change your date and carry on and continue walking this path of the golden road of the spirit of the sunlight. So the other path, there's always that yet, right? And when I think about it, There were periods of time in the 33 years that I didn't do any drugs, but I was still irritable, discontent, and irate. And I was a ticking time bomb ready to go off at any given time. I saw no beauty in anything, right? But when I'm walking this side of the path, I see beauty in everything, right? So I chose to hold my head up high and change my clean date and come honestly. After my 1 year, I called her up and I said, I'm going to apply. Okay, I'm going to apply for a US entry waiver because I'd like to be of service at world level. And she said, and I said, but I'm not going to tell them that I changed my clean date. And she said, well, honesty gets me everything. And I said, fine, I'll just tell them that I've been a prominent member, right, of a 12-step fellowship. She said, justifying and rationalizing. I went, fuck. Okay, fine, I'll tell them the truth. And that day I sat down and I told my story like I'm telling my story. And I sent it away and I waited. And then all of a sudden I get this letter from Homeland Security and I'm too scared to open it up. So I call my friend and I go, I got this letter. I don't know what to do. She said, open it. And I got a 1-year entry to come into the United States. And I thought, that is just so beautiful, right? Totally amazing. I never thought in my life that I was going to be able to do that. Remember, I told you that I went to do a treatment center panel, H&I, on the last Sunday of my freedom. And at that meeting, there was this one woman that we chatted with. And when I came out of prison, I went to a meeting and there she was chairing the meeting. I thought, wow, that's lovely, right? A few months later, I go back to that meeting. She's taking a 1-year cake. How cool is that, right? Her and I got to walk onto the conference floor hand in hand 10 years later, right? Like the miracles and the beauty of this program, the gifts that I have been given. When I got the call to have the honor to come here and share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys, I was blown away. Like, how did that work? How did someone like me get the honor and the privilege to come here and to do this deal? You know, the promises have all come true, and it is only by the grace of God that I stand here. You know, if you haven't done the 12 steps out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I highly suggest and recommend that you do. There are hundreds and thousands of us that have done this deal. You know, and if you do, you too can be rocketed into the fourth dimension. My name is Simone, and I am a grateful cocaine addict because without cocaine, I wouldn't be standing here. Without cocaine, I wouldn't have had found the fellowship that I had craved. I wouldn't have the family that I have today. I wouldn't have the friends that I have today from all around the world. And you know, COVID was a devastating thing, but COVID opened up the world for Cocaine Anonymous because now we got to meet people from all around the world, and we are now a global fellowship. We've always been, but now with having had the Zoom, you know, we got connections, you know, and for that I'm forever grateful. So thank you very much to the committee. It's been an awesome time. Thank you.
Beautiful show.
Thank you so much.